And so that's what I do every day.
Thank you so much, Priscilla, for that good introduction. I think we can go back now to Rollins.
Thank you.
It's going to be on. Yeah, it's on.
Okay. Thank you once again. Seems to be off.
Okay, let's try this one.
Something happened. Thank you once again. My name is Lawrence Moriah. I'm with the Africa Welfare Association, one of the founders, and we are a diaspora-based organization taking care of our African community worldwide in matters repatriation, evacuation, and also other things we'll talk about, including mental health. I'm based in Washington, D.C., and I'm delighted to be part of this panel to discuss community wellness. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Lawrence. We are going to go ahead and then also send to you, Professor Paul. Go ahead and do a quick introduction.
Well, good morning.
This one needs to be off. Yeah.
Well, good morning. Can you hear me? Oh, thank you. Yeah, we were having some technical challenges here. My name is Professor Bore, as it's been said. I am a licensed professional counselor in Texas, as well as a professor of counseling, where I not only teach and prepare counselors, but I also run a private practice where I see children from play therapy to adolescents and teenagers, and more particularly, see families in marriage and family therapy. The question that has been asked of us is, why are we here? I think my presence here today is because increasingly we're realizing and coming to the understanding that we cannot be healthy without being mentally healthy. So I'm here to make sure that we underscore the importance of being mentally healthy for us to be wholesomely healthy. And I'll be looking at that as we continue in the panel. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We have, throughout the last few days, we've been talking a lot about, democracy, education. We focused on technology. We looked at how different things really interrelate for investment. But in order for all these things really to take place, to be proper, there's this unspoken part of wellness as a whole. But also knowing what wellness is very important. So we're going to be tying these three aspects to see how it works well. So, Priscilla, let me ask you here for a moment, why is it necessary for us to focus on preventive health? Why is it necessary for us to do this?
I think actually, as many people have said,
yeah, it's one now.
Health is wealth. Your health is wealth. And so it is important to prevent it even before you get any chronic diseases. Mr. Jim Rohn said, take care of your body. It's the only place you have to live in. I think we all agree with that your body is the vessel that takes you through the experience of life. And so it is important to wake up every day and have the intention to take care of your health. So, in fact, I can give you a little bit of some data. So, 80% of chronic diseases are lifestyle related. And if the chronic diseases are lifestyle related, it means that there is something each one of us can do to prevent them. And so it is our responsibilities to really focus on our own health and take all the steps that we can take to be healthy. And for that purpose, we have to know the status of our health. We have to know, how is your blood pressure? How is your blood sugar? And you have to ask yourself, do you have a doctor? Do you go to see your primary care provider at least once a year? We all need to know what our status is, because it is better to know before you have a big problem so that you can prevent it from progressing. For example, If you have diabetes, how do you know even whether you have it? You can only know if you go to see your doctor and they do the measurements. High blood pressure, and also called hypertension, is a silent killer. And so you will not know that you have hypertension until sometimes you already have some, complications. So you really want to go get your numbers checked. Some people, even with cancer is a killer. And most of the times you don't know it until you get it checked. So are you having your annual physical? Are you getting your mammograms if you're a lady? Are you getting your colonoscopy for all of us? These days they have found out that people are getting colon cancer even as early as in their 30s. And so it is important to get your numbers checked. It is important for you to have at least get to see your doctor at least once a year so that you can be checked and know your status. And when it comes to health, there are so many things we can talk about. And so at this point, I'll just stop it at there and we'll continue to have the conversation.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. I'm going to ask, how does insurance and things like, how does it tie to wellness as a whole, Rollins?
Thank you, Dr. Agwene. Thank you, Priscilla, for that. Allow me, before I answer, I think it's important to emphasize what Priscilla is saying. Knowing what you have. A lot of times you know the shirt you wear, you know the shoe size and all that, but about your health, you need to know those numbers. Because once you know, that's when you can take care of something. So it is really, really important to have your regular checkup. The same way you take your car for service, go for service every year and make sure that you are okay. Only a doctor can tell you if you're okay. I've been in healthcare for a while, and one of the things, especially as men say, I'm okay because I work out, I go to the gym every day, so there can't be anything wrong with me. That is false sense. You have to be seen by a doctor to be able to take care of that. Back to your question, I think what we need to understand when it comes to health insurance, you're transferring the risk if you have health insurance. You transfer the risk to a health insurance company so that in the event of something, there is enough funds available to you without you hurting your pocket. You can go for any procedures, you can go for screening, etc. So health insurance really is not meant to treat you, it's supposed to prevent. So if you do those checks, then you don't have to be treated. In case you have to be treated, Priscilla said about cancer, we hear a lot of people diagnosed as stage 4. At stage 4, there's very little, if anything, the doctors can do to save your life. So you want that arrested early. If it's stage 1, stage 2, there is something we can do about it. I hope I've answered your question.
Very well. Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm going to kind of look at one of the issues we deal with our communities nowadays is the issue about how people feel comfortable they are. There is this, stress, for them not to be able to go for their own checkups. There are some things that people aren't willing yet to speak, and that seems to be raising problems as well. So, Professor Bore, can you tell us how we can tie all this into our mental wellness and how that relates to the conversation we're having right now?
Well, thank you. Let me go back and can you hear me? Okay, good. Let me go back and follow up with my colleagues what they've said. And before I say that, just maybe to qualify a statement here before we continue, to say at the end of this conference, we want this to be the icing on the cake for one reason only. We talked yesterday about the capacity that we have in reference to our human capital. And we talked about the economics. We talked about democracy. But we cannot qualify and effect any of those things if we are not in good health and if we are not in a functional state that can actually help us out. Now, Why is that important for us here in terms of mental health? When COVID happened 2 years ago, 3 years ago, it did expose the rotten underbelly of our mental health status. And for the very first time, we realized that we were not really healthy, and we needed to be healthy. Because of that, we found out through research that the most affected groups or populations were the minorities, because minorities had never, and in a very small scale, only appreciated what mental health was. When we found out about the minorities, more particularly for the immigrant population, we have a very big stigma about mental health. We cannot go out to seek mental health because we don't want to appear that we are crazy. Now, the absence of mental illness does not mean that you are healthy. The absence of mental illness doesn't mean that you are healthy, you are mentally healthy. Let's come back to us as immigrants. Right now, we are reporting the highest numbers of divorces in our families. We are reporting the highest numbers of suicides, both here and in Kenya. We are reporting discord in families between parents and children. And we go back and we say, where did the rain start to beat us? And I go back and I say, we have not been prepared to address our wellness wholesome. And because of that, let me go back and define what mental health is and should be for us. Mental health has to do with our psychological, our emotional, and our social well-being. We cannot be good accountants when our mental health is not okay. We cannot be good fathers when our mental health is not okay. We cannot be good pastors, for those pastors who are here, when our mental health is not okay. And therefore, my being here today is, if nothing else, to help us appreciate that we have to come to the point of saying it's okay not to be okay, and be willing to seek help when we need to. That is not something that we have done as a people. Not only is mental health important in reference to our social, our psychological, our emotional health, but it dictates how we balance and arrive at an equilibrium, how we handle stress, how we handle change, how we relate to others. When we talk to most of us who grew up in Africa and came to this country, one of the biggest feelings that we can express without blinking is anger. And that is what we see we're struggling with. So we want to talk through this panel to say, what therefore do we need to do to make sure that our mental health is in a place where we can be productive and we can feel okay? And what do we do to get the help that we need? Thank you.
Thank you so much for that emphasis. I know the idea for us to be really ready and willing to understand dealing with health issues. Priscilla, in our own community here, particularly in the United States and in the diaspora in general, a number of us either don't necessarily speak about what is going on within ourselves, mentally, as Professor Bore has just mentioned. From the health standpoint, and you being in healthcare, what are some of the ways you can encourage people to start, having these conversations, but also what are the things you think people need to see when they start to see these signs? It will be an indicator that they really need to have a checkup or have a conversation with someone else. What would you like to tell our community?
Thank you for the question. I usually prefer that we get ourselves checked even when we don't feel bad. If you don't want to wait until you have symptoms. However, if you do have symptoms, it's really hard for me to say, because there are so many chronic diseases. We have strokes, we have hypertension, we have high cholesterol, and most of these things, you do not know that they're there until you really have complications. So what I like to tell people is this. Number one, nutrition is very key. It is very important for us to be very intentional, and I use that word very carefully, very intentional about what we eat. I know right now we are eating, and sometimes we do eat more things than we intended to eat. When we think about our culture, we grew up in a culture whereby we ate mainly foods that are from the farms. We ate ugali, we ate beans, we ate peas. We ate so many fresh, healthy foods. But as the world becomes more industrialized, and as the world becomes a very small space that we can be able to see what other people in other world are eating, people have changed. Because number one, I think we were convinced that the kind of food we ate was inferior. The beans are inferior. I have often heard people say that they no longer want to eat beans or githeri because it reminds them of poverty. Maybe you're one of those people, but is it really? Is it what you think, or is it what somebody else convinced you, or is it the truth? Most of us have been indoctrinated to think that meat is a way of showing that you're wealthy, you're doing better. Is it really? Bacon, stuff like that, processed foods. In fact, if you go to the World Health Organization, you will find that processed meats have been classified as group 1 carcinogen. What does that mean? It means that it has potential to cause cancer, just like smoking does. And therefore, we have to be very careful with the diets that we eat. I usually encourage people to eat whole and processed foods. Limit meat. I'm not going to tell you to not eat meat. I don't eat meat myself. But I'm going to encourage you to really limit the amount of meat you eat. And if anything, try to limit the processed meats. Nutrition is wide. I can only cover so much. The other thing is to make sure that you're optimizing your physical activities. Exercise. In fact, it has been found that exercise can even help boost your mood. So you really want to exercise. And as a rule of thumb, at least make sure you get 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activities per week. 150 to 300 minutes per week. So if you're not doing anything, if you have a desk job, be intentional about the physical activities. Number 3, stress management. And that is where Dr. Bore is talking about. Stress management is key to your health. A lot of times we also underestimate sleep. You have got to sleep well. I remember when I came to this country and I found out there was something called overtime. I used to call myself the queen of overtime because I was taking every time I saw an opening, I would take it. Remember, you need to sleep at least 7 to 8 hours of sleep. If you're not doing that, you're shortening your life. The other thing is making sure that you have healthy connection with your family and friends. Connect with people. It is important, and that's what we've been doing throughout this session. We are connecting with each other. We are making those healthy connections. And the other one is making sure that you're avoiding or you're not overusing things like alcohol. Be responsible. Be responsible. If you're still smoking at this time and age, you've got to really consider quitting. And that's what I'm going to tell people. Prevention is always better than cure. So when you do these things, you're optimizing your health. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you very much, Priscilla, pointing out that food could be nutrition that's not properly tailored could be the beginning of stress, could be the beginning of problems that we have that maybe we also do not necessarily end up linking to the wellness that we need to bring in. So one of the things that I think in the diaspora that seems to be having a big effect is the fact on how do we deal with moments when we lose our loved ones, or we don't have enough financial situations to take care of them. Can you address this, Mariah? How does the fact that we have not been very good at knowing how to take care of, when we have people who pass away, and then we have to get into issues, we have to fundraise to support them. How is this one affecting us, and how can we deal with this in our community?
Thank you, Dr. Anwaje. This is a topic that we in diaspora try and shun. We try and sweep it under the carpet, but the reality is nobody will live forever. We are all going to go at one point. And the Africa Welfare Association was actually formed to take care of the huge diaspora problem we have. It's not just in the US. And to give you numbers, numbers don't lie. In the US, we lose about 400 Kenyans, or we send 400 Kenyans home each year. The number goes up. There's nothing wrong with diaspora. It's the same percentage of people who pass away naturally at home or through illness. So don't think if you come to diaspora, you're going to likely die. And that's not true. The myth also behind it is that it's only old people who die. That is not true. So we need to be prepared. Being prepared does not mean that you attract death. It's the same way if you're carrying an umbrella, you will not attract rain, but you are prepared if it rains. The Africa Welfare Association gives you the comfort, peace of mind that if you lose a loved one, you also do not have to lose money. I mentioned 400 Kenyans taken home each year. That comes at a cost of $6.5 million. It's a huge number. But there's a reason we don't feel that number as being huge. It's because it's a $50 you have in your cash app, the $100 here and there. If you look at your cash app and add up that money, on average, each Kenyan contributes $1,100 per year. Today, if I told you to put that money every January, you'll say, this is crazy. With our program, which is fully insured, taking 400 people home, or whatever number it is, would cost 1.5% of that 6.4, about $100,000. Same as buying your car insurance. Can you imagine if we had no car insurance and then I call you, or you wake up and you're in my WhatsApp group because you need to buy me a new car? You'd think that is crazy. It's the same thing with funerals. It is unsustainable the way we do it, and it is very, very expensive. To cut it short, we are losing $6.4 million from our pockets. That is money that's not going to come back. We've already lost our loved ones. Let us try and do these things in a little bit better way. Membership for a single person is about $150 per year, and we're going to pay for everything up to your final resting place. If you have a family, it doesn't matter how many children, the most expensive plan you'll get is $325 per year. That's $1 a day. We can afford that.
So people may ask you a question like, thank you. A question like, so how do you, what does it cost for a person to, you say it's $150, but what are they getting out of that? What is helping them? Well, those are the kind of questions people have, and there's a big thing in the diaspora where fundraising are becoming not only focused on helping the problem, but also people are using them as an additional thing to get money out of it. Can you address that? Like, what is the benefit of getting that, and what is expected with that?
Thank you. As a community, we always come together, just like we're gathered here today. We tackle problems together. That's a very good way, especially for our mental health, if we can be able to sit and resolve issues. But when it comes to finances, especially with repatriation or big ticket items, it is such a huge burden on the community. Now, for AWA, for $150, a single person is covered per year. What that covers, in the event somebody dies, we take over from the funeral home, we'll process everything, we'll work with the embassy, we'll work with the airline, we'll work with the funeral home. We want to remove that burden from the bereaved family. And we will work with you until we get to the final resting place. To enroll is very easy. You just go online. We're going to put up the information. You go online. We do not ask for government papers or even your ID. We don't need that. We're not here to create another problem. We're here to solve it. So you enroll. It takes about 90 seconds to enroll. Give us your name, your address, phone number, next of kin, and then you go straight to the payment. That's all it takes. I think I mentioned that if you have a family, it's about $325. The only thing we have, like anything that's insurance-backed, we have to be careful that we are not enrolling people who know or have been diagnosed as terminally ill. Otherwise, it would collapse. It's the same way if you went to buy car insurance after an accident, nobody will sell you insurance, or when your house is on fire. So those are the only exclusions we have. So anybody can enter and become a member by registering online and paying the premium. We do have a 90-day waiting period, and that is designed also to prevent people who might want to take advantage. I have to say that maybe the last year we had 3 people in the community try to take advantage. We have to safeguard that, because then it will not work when people try and game the system. So this is something created. It's not just for Kenyans. It's a solution for all of Africa.
Okay, thank you so much for that response, Lawrence. One of that's a stress and fact. So if we remove that stress from ourselves, then we can probably start focusing on making our mental health even sound. So one of the other issues I think I wanted to address is many of us, obviously, it's almost like an ego sort of thing. We're afraid to talk about mental health. We don't want to even acknowledge that it's there, and we just alluded that at the very beginning. How do we get people to really start feeling comfortable to address it and really deal with it, so that we don't have the issues that we are struggling with in our own community?
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'll follow suit again, and let me thank the 2 panelists here for addressing the issue of prevention. That unless we are ready to prevent things before they happen, when they happen, we don't have a plan for that. So, but let's go back to distinguish between our mental health and mental illness. When you are growing up, we are socialized in different ways. Our socialization equips the lifestyle and the convictions that we perceive life with. If you remember when you were growing up, when they gave you a pair of green sunglasses, then everything else became green. When they changed that and they gave you red ones, everything else became red. In our socialization, we grow up to appreciate and adopt some things that are okay and those that are not okay. When you were growing up, there were families that perhaps had a child that was struggling with mental health, and that child did not go to school. When you visited their home, most likely that child was hidden behind somewhere in the house. You did not see them because we did not appreciate what differences of mental health was. So mental illness, I want us to begin by saying, just the same way I can have diabetes, just the same way I can have cancer, just the same way that I can have any other disease and go to the doctor without fearing, is the same way we need to begin to appreciate mental illness. We have different categories and different types of mental illness. Let me begin by just mentioning some of them. Some of them are anxiety disorders, where you have generalized anxiety, you have social anxiety, where you don't even want to appear before people because you're scared. We have mood disorders, and that's a big one for a good number of population. Mood disorders will bring in things like bipolar, where you have all these mood swings, and many people have that. Mood disorders will have depression. We have a big population now that is depressed. We have psychotic disorders, where you're dealing with schizophrenia, and this is characterized by delusions and hallucinations. we have eating disorders, we have impulsive and addiction disorders, we have personality disorders, we have PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, we have OCD, obsessive compulsive disorders. These are mental illnesses that can be diagnosed, and you can get help with those. The fact that you can be diagnosed with bipolar is not the end of life, but the problem is we have a stigma that we think because I've been diagnosed with bipolar, therefore I'm mentally retarded. We have to distinguish mental retardation from mental illness. But we lump all those together and we say, this is a crazy person. And therefore, when we begin to appreciate that we have mental illness, just like we have any other diseases, and it is okay for us to go and seek help. The seeking help is our biggest weakness, because we cannot bring ourselves to go and seek help, because we as a people, we need to come to the point of saying we are so scared and we fear what people will say about me. Our marriages are breaking not because we could not get help, but because we live lives for what we pretend them to be. Most of our lives are what we pretend to be. People will have issues, and we will have big issues in the family, but we've not come to the point of saying, let's call a spade a spade. Now, let me connect this to back home, back in Kenya and Africa. Make no mistake that a wounded parent will bring up wounded kids. Make no mistake that a wounded wife, a wounded husband will make a wounded spouse. And those are things that you'll be dealing with right at home. Why do I say this? Let's go back and look at the stress and the trauma that people have been raised up with, but nobody has addressed it, and yet it's the elephant in the room. We've gone back and did research for the kids who are about 3, 4, 5, up to 6 years during 9/11. When they saw the Twin Towers come down in this country, the fear and the anxiety that the life as they knew was coming to an end, they got so scared that 20 years after that, when research has been done and followed those kids, they are still very anxious. Allow me, I don't want to be political, but every 5 years in Kenya, we have violence and we have kids who are scared for their life. And it's been repeated for many, many years. We have modeled violence for our kids, and the only tool that our kids have grown up in Kenya and other parts of Africa with is that violence is the only way that we solve problems. No wonder we'll come to this country and still have domestic violence and do not report it. And we ask, what is our mental health status? And therefore, I come to say, let's go back to your homes and allow yourselves the leverage to break the code of silence from your family and say, what is it that we have not looked each other in the eye and ask, what is affecting us? Have we addressed our mental health, or are we pretending that we are okay when we are not okay? Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Bore, for that. It's very clear, you've made it very clear that not being able to address things that, like violence earlier on, and not being able to say what it is, continues to grow it. So we do have a responsibility to get into addressing it, but also making sure that we model it well. I would like to bring a question that may probably present may be helpful here, in terms of, you talked about connections, the idea that, like having people connecting and making sure that we are able to really establish that can be very helpful. And the fear of also connecting. People are also afraid sometimes to connect, like say you're in a conference like this, you are meeting people, you don't know who they are, you have all those kind of things. that prevent you actually from creating good relationships by not addressing the wellness that we want. Can you address a little bit of what is the best way you think so we could create these good connections that end up fostering a better awareness?
That's a good question also, and I think connection is probably related also to mental illness also. Sorry, if I may say that way. So we need to feel comfortable to connect with each other. We need to feel comfortable to speak with each other and build those relationships, because relationships are key. Because I think even in our African culture, we know that no one can do life alone. Even in our church, we do say, you cannot do life alone. So we need to really find that comfort. And if you're finding that difficult, just get yourself evaluated. And I'm not saying that there's anything wrong with you. Some of us are quiet. I am generally quiet, but I feel comfortable when I'm talking about health. But we really need to search deep inside of ourselves and see, why is it that I don't feel comfortable connecting with others? But it's always good to, when you come here, say hi to your friends, to the people, to the person next to you. Do you know the person sitting next to you, or you've just been seeing them throughout the conference? Do you know your neighbors? We live in a community whereby you just come into your house, you park in your garage, and the following day you get up and still get out of your garage into your work. Make those intentional moves to make connections with the people that are around you so that you get to know them. Maybe they have something they can offer to you, or maybe there's some help you can offer to them. And I would really encourage us to make those connections. It helps. And I think that's a good way to go.
Thank you so much. We are getting close to the end of the panel, but I'd like to turn over to Ms. Mariah here for a moment to tell us one of the, I think, money, obviously, and insurance you talked about here. How is this becoming a source of tension that actually ends up creating all these difficult moments for most of us here in our community?
Thank you. I think that's a very important aspect of our wellness. A lot of times we think finances, even having a lot of money, is a solution. No, it's not. I think you have to have a healthy relationship. Having tons of money will not create wellness, will not create happiness if what is inside your head, as Dr. Bora is saying, if things are not right with yourself. It's like a computer. We all buy laptops. And most of you here, I think, probably we're about the same age. We remember there was an error called syntax error in our computer, and you called IT for it to be fixed. Our brains are the same way. They're like computers. Things go wrong, so you need to call a specialist to remove that syntax error. It doesn't mean you're crazy. In fact, you're better off if you're seeking help to be able to resolve that. If you do those things, then you'd also be able to understand your finances better, so that you're not just doing addition and subtraction saying, if I could only get one more shift, if I could only get one more whatever amount of money. You might be okay with what you have, and when you're in that space, you'll find that you are going to make more without stressing yourself, without stressing your family, etc. So it has to be a good balance. It's the same way that you eat food. You cannot eat this food and say, I'm going to eat today and for tomorrow and the next day, and the next meal I have is on Thursday. Your body cannot store it that long. So it's a balance. You're going to eat for today so that you get through the day, and tomorrow you have to eat again. Apply the same for your wellness, for your financial wellness. Kidogo kidogo gets you there.
Thank you. Before we round up, and I'm going to allow you to prepare yourselves for the closing kind of segments, where we will address what you do, and kind of a little bit of your story, and then finishing up with anything that you think people watching us online, the audience who are here as well, can follow up with you in general. But I'd like to give you a moment as you think through that as I make this statement. So think through that. That's going to be your closing moments. So those ones who are watching us online, everyone who is present here, there are a couple of things we've talked about in terms of wellness that's key. And one of the things that seems to be quite clear for all of us is that if we learn how to connect well with each other, and that begins with you trusting who you are and understanding the fact that you have your own uniqueness, and that uniqueness cannot be brought by anybody else. Because once you have that uniqueness, and knowing that it's important and it's different, it allows you to connect with other people very well, but also acknowledging the fact that each person brings something special, and what they bring makes it better for the community going forward. And that will be maybe the source of us creating a better understanding, which probably address most of the issues that we deal with a lot in terms of like fear and an ability for us really to really look much more to the future. So it's a very important conversation we had this morning in terms of wellness and how that wellness ties with everything else we do. Because if there's no wellness really, it's very clear to me that we wouldn't be successful in the things we're talking about. We wouldn't be able to implement or achieve very well all the things we've been addressing here throughout this 3 days of our conference. So this moment, I'm going to start with Priscilla. So our first, ladies first. We ask you to tell us a little bit about your story and maybe a bit of your closing remarks and why you got into where you are at the moment.
I started by saying your health is your wealth. One time Buddha said, health is the greatest gift, contentment the greatest wealth, faithfulness the best leadership. And to add a little bit to that, the Bible also tells us, if your soul is not prospering, every other form of prosperity becomes meaningless. 1 Corinthians 3:17, if anyone defiles the temple of God, God will destroy him, for the temple of God is holy, which temple you are. And Hosea says, Hosea 4:1, my people are destroyed for lack of knowledge. And so with that, I encourage all of us to really increase our knowledge about our health, because that's the only way we are going to be able to become healthy. And I will also end by reading a quote by Dalai Lama. When he was asked, what surprises him most about humanity? He answered, man, because he sacrifices his health in order to make money. Then he sacrifices his money to recuperate his health. And then he is so anxious about the future that he does not enjoy the present. The result being that he does not live in the present or the future. He lives as if he is never going to die. And then he dies having never lived. So, are we just pursuing things and not living for today? You asked me what brought me to health. I have always wanted to be a healthcare provider, and that's my passion. And so I actually started off in my past when I was younger in lifestyle. in agriculture, the animal husbandry. I am a graduate of Egerton, but then after a while I changed to health because that's my first passion. I just had a detour. So it is my pleasure I just want to thank OVC for giving us this opportunity. I really want to thank them for organizing this expo. And I'm so impressed by what has been going on. I have learned a lot, and I want to thank everyone. Guys, let us get healthy. Make it your intention to find a doctor if you do not have one, to find a healthcare provider, mental health provider, so that we can all stay healthy and enjoy whatever we are pursuing in our pursuits of life. Thank you, and it has been a pleasure.
Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I'll go ahead and make my final remarks as well. And just to follow suit with Dr. Priscilla, what she had said, that I want to make, it's not my quote, it's been said, that the worst tragedy in this life is indifference. When we become indifferent to our own issues, then we are setting ourselves for failure. But following that, let me throw some negative factors that will affect our mental health out there. You know, you don't have to be mentally ill to go seek help. And I hope you live here today in your mind resolving that it's okay for you to seek help when you need help. Why is that important? Because what made me get into this field is when I realized how ill-equipped I was with the tools of life. And I asked myself, if the only tool that I left home with was a hammer, if I need to screw a screw into a wood, I cannot use a hammer. And yet that's maybe the only tool I have. We have very limited tools on how to do life. And what I ask is that we can seek help to expand and retool our toolboxes so that we do not have only one tool. Secondly, what pushed me is I realized that when I'm disciplining my children, all I know is kiboko. When they fail their exam, I know to take care of them, kiboko. When they don't do well in anything else, I know kiboko. When people got married and there were issues at home, I realized that they also used the same kiboko to solve problems and differences. And in my mind, I said, there must be a better way to find other tools. I want to tell you that better way, you'll find a lot of good tools from your mental health providers. Number 3, many of you who are here today have insurance. Your insurance will pay for you to see a counselor. I pray that in this lifetime, we can transition to the point where we not only have a primary physician, but we also have a primary therapist for yourself that you see every year. You just go down and sit down with them. We need that. So I would like for you to know that when we're dealing with unresolved feelings, when we're dealing with worry, a lot of sadness, a lot of anger, a lot of frustration, we are at risk of our mental illness or mental health not being okay. When we're dealing with guilt, when we're dealing with shame, the things that I've mentioned, I'm sure each one of you can copy and paste into your life. And so as you live here today, my final remarks are, I want you to take personal responsibility of your mental health and realize this. I can be the best accountant. I can be the best engineer. I can be the best doctor. I can be the best professor. But without a good mental health, all is in vain. And the line that separates your mental health and wellness is quite thin, that you want to take care of your mental health before things go the wrong way. I will say, may God bless you, but go home and be intentional with your mental health, beginning with your family, and break the code of silence at home. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Mr. Mariah, if you can also quickly do a closing statement on the same.
That's very inspiring, Dr. Bore. I'll be like other men, I'll say I do not need help. No, I'm kidding. It is important. I'll echo what has been said by the other panelists, that we have to take care of each other. We are one. If you look behind us, all these banners, these are companies by our brothers and sisters. If you buy land, Karenge Associates can design for you. You can send them money through WirePay and all that. So let's not be afraid. Even we can go and see Dr. Bore if we have issues. One of the things I've noticed, and this is not to lament, as the ambassador said, we sometimes are afraid to deal with our own. We project the weakness. Because I cannot do something, I'll think that Professor Diamri or Dr. Shiori cannot do it. And therefore, when they come up with a solution, I doubt it. Well, if somebody else, a different color, stood here and said the same thing, I will jump at it. So we have to be intentional, as Dr. Bore said, and figure out that we're able to solve our problems, we're able to take care of ourselves, and we're able to progress together. Because we are using quotes from Asia, I'll go to Gandhi, and he did tell us that in any country, he's talking about India, it's the same application for Kenya. There is enough for everybody, but not enough for our grid. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And with that, we have come to the end of our panel. I would like to thank all of you for watching us live, and for our audience for being a very participatory audience, very keen listeners in following our conversation, and we'd like to thank you. I'd like to end by saying that, this conversation we have just started here, some of those can be easily also dealt with if we continue having conversations. There's no issue that's small enough, but also try to add some humor in your life as much as you can. Be who you are, be very, authentic and genuine, so that way you can deal with your issues that affect you, and that in itself, based on our conversation here, could be actually the beginning of some of the problems that a solution to some of the problem we have. Thank you for listening to us. Thanks for all the panelists for being very wonderful panelists and being able to share your knowledge of information with our participants here, and also with all those who are watching us online. Thank you.
Is it working? Oh, okay. There you go, please. Okay, just, okay, good, glad. Are we ready to get started? Should we start?